The first issue of Conan the Barbarian has a publication date of October 1970. On the very first page, the close attention paid to Frazetta's iconic image on the cover to Conan the Adventurer is noticeable, including the woman to Conan's left knee, who is less blurred into the background in the comic image, but in the same kind of subordinate position. In comics, visual imagery is as important or more so to the narrative than written text, and provides them with their strongest unifying themes. The creators felt that Conan should at least have an outfit with the feel of a superhero costume, including a distinctive medallion and horned helmet. These were later abandoned when Conan was clearly recognizable as the only long-haired character in a fur loincloth. There were other things new to the comics, like putting nipples on male figures, which artist Barry Windsor Smith began doing in issue 6, even though after that you often still can't see them on the covers. Nipples are conspicuously absent in another contemporary bare-chested character, the Submariner. If another Conan artist left them out, writer Roy Thomas would pencil them in himself. In Conan number 1, the teenage barbarian wanders north of his native Samaria into a war between two Nordic groups, the Aesir and the Vanir. Seeing the Aesir chief ganged up on by 3 Vanir, honor dictates to Conan that he intervene. After saving him, Conan stays on with the Aesir as a mercenary. The leaders of the Vanir leave their forces in order to escape a pending re-engagement with the Aesir and seek the counsel of the gods. That's the start of a critique in the comic of religion. Seeking spiritual counsel is also a pretense for the Vanir leaders to run from the conflict and to save their own skins. It also introduces a central theme of the series: be tough and don't mess with forces you don't understand. One of Conan's hallmarks as a barbarian is that he has a strong fear of the supernatural. Others pay for their ignorance or curiosity, usually with their lives. The fleeing Vanir stumble upon the cave of a sinister and spindly hermit who introduces himself as the Shaman, who summons winged demons to defeat the Aesir and capture Conan. The Shaman then begins an occult ritual that will send Conan into a magical weapon, the Star Stone. As the ritual progresses, scenes like an acid trip flash by from the pre-cataclysmic past to the distant future, ending with an astronaut in space. The visions drive the Shaman mad. Conan is able to break free, defeating the demons by shattering the stone. Always the pragmatist, Conan sets off into the sunset, wishing only for food and a sword, leaving all thoughts of the episode behind. Conan's long rock star hair, rendered by young British artist Barry Smith, made him look for all the world like a burlier young version of Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page. The psychedelic element of the ritual is a clear visual reference to Stanley Kubrick's 1968 film, 2001: A Space Odyssey. These are a few of the subculture elements that are prominent early in the series. The mythical past is an appeal to subcultural values enhanced by Art Nouveau motifs with links to psychedelia. The early series is also marked by the theme of feminine betrayal. This resurfaces with other barbarians, of all places, in the 1995 TV series Xena, Warrior Princess. A girl Conan meets in the episode of The Shaman is a demon in disguise, who came from a world inside the Starstone. She would have been free forever if the ritual had been completed, putting Conan there in her place. The second issue deals slightly differently than the first with themes of civilization and humanity. The cover displays the savage foes, monsters, and women that are colorful, recurring motifs of the series, as well as another perennial favorite, lost cities. Conan is attracted by a pretty woman who tricks him into an ambush by humanoid ape men. Again, feminine betrayal at its highest. Like other teenage males, Conan thinks with something besides his head. Once captured, he's brought back to the ape men's underground city, the hidden ruins of an ancient civilization. Howard's stories have a running theme of devolution or fall from a golden age. In his pseudo-historical essay, The Hyborian Age, Conan is said to have lived in an age undreamed of that followed a slow reascent to barbarism and civilization after the oceans had drank Atlantis, which had thrown most of humankind into animal savagery. The Hyborians are an analog to the Indo-Europeans and the predecessors of the various peoples inhabiting Conan's world. In the comic, the apes have taken over the subterranean ruins of a past civilization, capturing smarter but weaker human slaves. This is also a reference to another popular film of the time, Planet of the Apes. Not surprisingly, Conan's temperament is not suited to slavery, and he is made a gladiator. His heroics in the arena inspire an uprising of the slaves. The revolution is a success, and Conan is free again. By just the first couple of issues, if you read between the lines, Conan the Barbarian presents its own kind of theory of humanity and history involving the image of the barbarian in popular culture. Howard is often quoted as writing, "Barbarism is the natural state of mankind. Kingdoms inherit their basis from the lost civilizations of a furtive and hidden past, and are built upon the backs of the oppressed. Even beastmen profit from this human misery. Only the barbarian dwells in an incorruptible state, separate from civilization, without need of organized religion or even mercy. He makes a living by force or theft in a senseless world." Conan the Barbarian number 3, The Passing of the Grim Grey God, was adapted from Howard's fictional account of the Battle of Clontarf in AD 1014 that never included Conan in the original story. After escaping slave pens of a people known as the Hyperboreans that he fell into after issue 2, Conan meets a gray man. Later it turns out to be Bori, the war god of the Hyperboreans, who is wandering in disguise like the Norse Odin. The stranger tells Conan that soon he shall witness the passing of kings, and of more than kings. As the story unfolds, Conan becomes the mercenary of one warring faction, and eventually the kings on both sides meet in a tent and kill each other during the larger battle. Again, the follies of civilization and egotistical rulers. Conan breaks free of chains at the beginning of the story, and a few other stories at the beginning of the series start that way, like issue 11's Rogues in the House. Conan's creator Howard was a very outspoken opponent of slavery. He spent a lot of time with African Americans in the area of Cross Plains, Texas, where he lived, and collected folktales that were brought into some of his writing. This foreshadows later white rock and rollers like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, who incorporated the Afro-American blues into their music. The theme of freedom and civil rights resonated with the times of Thomas and Smith's Conan, not only with the civil rights era of the 1960s, but in the bonds that formed between black activists and American youth in general in the anti-war movement. Freedom and peace became synonymous, and for the first time millions of white American youth could see themselves in the shoes of oppressed minorities over pressures to fight in or to support an unpopular war in Vietnam. Going through the first 20 or 30 issues, many such themes are present, and they changed with the times. The connection with current events and the theme of freedom is present in the movies too, and Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian. That deals with strong concerns over the encroachment of mind control cults in the early 1980s, represented in the film by the ensorcelled followers of the wizard Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones. Conan has a unique role as the barbarian in cutting through the chains of the mind put on people through drugs, sexual manipulation, and other mind control techniques in his own inimitable way. In the comic book series, freedom and anti-slavery is probably most poignantly addressed in issue 4's Tower of the Elephant. Try reading this and Howard's short story of the same name together, and think of the early 70s. What themes carry through from the short story to the comic book adaptation, and how is the Barbarian uniquely suited to addressing those themes? How are they presented in Conan the Barbarian number 4 in a way that appealed to popular concerns in the early 1970s? When you watch 1982's Conan the Barbarian, what popular themes can you find there? How does that differ from Howard's tales and from the Marvel series? And why do you think that is? Let me be clear. Not everything is all hunky-dory in the messages that Conan the Barbarian presents, no matter what the era or the format happens to be. For instance, you can watch or read Conan and watch Xena Warrior Princess and see similarities and vast differences that appealed to a changing audience and still do. not the least of which are Conan's burly heterosexual masculinity. But there's also something to be said about men running around half-dressed in stories of a character that was arguably designed to appeal to male readers. There are also strong misogynist themes in Conan, like the female betrayer, that clearly play on adolescent male fantasies. And maybe also girls' and women's own desires to avoid gender expectations of being a nice and obedient mate. However you cut it, this character and his exploits still provide much food for thought.